Greetings, unsettled souls, and welcome to The Correct Views. Sam I.B. DeGangi reporting for the Media Speaks, and today's 9/11. Now, you guys are going to be inundated with 9/11 reports, so please don't tune out. If you really don't want to hear it, just skip ahead, but I promise you, I'm not going to come on here and give you the same drivel that you're going to get all day. There's a couple things I think need to be said about 9/11, and then we're going to move on. We know one thing for sure. Even if everything happened exactly the way the government said that it did, we are still facing an attack of Orwellian proportions upon our basic freedoms. That we know beyond a shadow of a doubt. Before I go on much further, I'm not one of these people that think rockets flew into the World Trade Center. I do believe that they were planes. I do believe that people died in it. And I was at Ground Zero with Dan Reese and my brother and a few other people within, like, I don't know, a month or so of when it happened. The buildings really fell down. Aliens didn't do it. I don't believe we were nuked. And I've heard some other theories. The big question, does Sam I.B. DeGangi believe that 911 was an inside job? Yes, but not in the way that a lot of other people do. There were a number of reasons that the government and the people that owned businesses inside of those towers, there was a number of ways that they profited from this happening, and there were a number of warnings. I'm not going to go over them. You can look up and type in 911 was an inside job, and you'll find underground news, you'll find mainstream news, you'll find all kind of news. What I do know is this: it was preventable. A number of people knew enough things in time that it was 110% preventable. I know that it was believed to some degree that one of the targets was a nuclear power plant, perhaps the one that hit Pennsylvania. If that was the case, the number of things we have done to strengthen our nuclear power plants since then has been almost nothing. I have a Fukushima story that I'm not going to get to tonight that talks about how people repeatedly just drive box vans up beside reactors and nothing ever happens. So I know we're not safer there, which could create a nuclear bomb event in terms of toxicity without them even needing a bomb. What else do we know? We know that there were 3 towers fell. One of them weren't hit by anything. We know that they fell at free fall speed, which can only happen during a controlled demolition. Now, some people say that the buildings were rigged before so that they would fall. Other people have said that one or all 3 of them were rigged afterwards, and that they dropped the towers to prevent them from falling into other towers, therefore saying, hey, it's safer to let these towers fall straight down and kill a few thousand people than it is to let these towers fall sideways and hit one of the other buildings. I've heard a number of arguments for it, but from anybody with any knowledge of physics, it was free fall and it was a controlled demolition. I think rather than go over whether or not it was an inside job, I think what we need to do is, I'm going to leave that to other commentators. What I'm going to do on this show before I close out the talk about this, and my heart goes out to, of course, the families, above all others, no matter which side of this you're on. I think it's very, very important for us to realize that this, even if the government is completely right with the way that it happened, it is being used to completely obliterate the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, and it is being used to send us into a one-world currency. It is being used for everything. Terrorism is now the boogeyman, and the boogeyman is everywhere just in time for Halloween season. That is what we need to be concerned about. In terms of articles for it, I have one that I want to get to, and I think it's very profound. And quickly, I want to address this issue that it was America that trained them. All right, look. We backed people in order to win the Cold War. Was that wrong? Was that right? You can go on about that debate forever. Again, I'm a non-interventionalist. I don't think we need to be sticking our noses in places, but let's pretend. Would the world be a better place if the communists had won and the Soviet Union was still what it was? Look at the number of people that Stalin killed before you go ahead and answer that question. Did we make things worse or did we make things better? Who knows? I know that if I was president, I probably would not have done it because I'm a non-interventionalist. And if I had done it, if I, had funded Afghanistan, I would have done it through Congress, and it would have been something that my entire administration did. If for some reason I felt like that was what was needed to be done against Russia at the time. Having said that, just because you give money to a side that is less evil in your eyes than the evil that you're trying to destroy, that doesn't mean that you wanted them to later come into your country and fly planes into your building. Was it used? Yes. Did they purposefully fund them in the 80s for that purpose? Come on now, that would be, nobody can plan like that. However, you can plan to destabilize the general system, to bring everybody under one leadership, one world. And that, whether it was done on purpose or on accident, has been done. But don't give me this BS that we paid for it. If I give the crack dealer down the street $10 because I want him to guard my house, he uses the $10 to, I don't know how you kill somebody with $10, but we'll go with it. He gets a $10 gun and by some miracle it works, and he kills somebody. That doesn't mean that I funded the crackhead so that the person would die. Do I believe that our government brings a lot of this back upon itself? Yes, I do. I believe that very much. Do I believe that America is to blame for everything in the world? No, I'm not one of those people. RIA Novosoti, the Obama administration refuses to declassify the information about the involvement of certain foreign governments in the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001, despite the calls of efforts of Congress members. Congressman Stephen Lynch told IRA Novosoti on Tuesday. Let's pause for a minute. It is not just a bunch of lunatic fringe leftists in the Hate America First crowd that's wanting this. Members of Congress want this released. And I can tell you up front, I think one of the things that are in this is our little butt buddy over the Saudi Arabia, who we just love. They were very much behind this. And I think a lot of those 28 pages finger Saudi Arabia, mark my words. We've had dialogue, and the families have had dialogue, but it hasn't been productive up until now, Lynch said. House Resolution 428 is a resolution introduced to make public 28 pages of the joint inquiry into intelligence activities before and after the terrorist attacks in September 01. The pages, it goes on, initially classified by President George W. Bush, have remained classified under President Barack Obama. But wasn't it Obama that wanted insight into this? Wasn't it Kerry and Clinton and all of those heroes? The resolution states that declassification of the pages is necessary to provide the American public with the full truth surrounding the tragic events of September 11th, particularly relating to the involvement of foreign governments. In other words, if it wasn't an outright inside job, there are things they are hiding about what governments, probably governments that we work hand to hand with, knew when, what warnings we got when, and again, you got to remember, if some bonehead from the Westboro Baptist Church kills somebody in the name of American Christianity, that doesn't mean that that's what America as a government wanted. Having said that, you can get warnings from other governments that you may not heed. If you don't believe me, look this up. The Japanese announced that they were going to bomb Pearl Harbor. I think it was on Saturday. They announced that they were going to do it before they did it. America knew that it was coming. That's not me talking. Look it up. It's in major newspapers. Don't tell me it wasn't announced. So it's happened before, people. It's happened before. I think it can inform our decisions around anti-terrorism policy. I think it can be helpful, Lynch said. It might send a message to those who might finance terrorism that it might come back to bite them. Like Saudi Arabia, do they finance terrorism? Yeah. Do they cut women's body parts off if they drive a car? Yes. That's who we work with. because we can't drill for our own oil. We might poison some endangered caribou. You can clone the caribou. We need to get the hell out of the Middle East. I am not so sure how quickly, but I am hopeful that the more people understand what the pages are in it, what's in the 28 pages, the more legislators will sign on, he said. So far, only about a dozen members of Congress have actually read it. Guys, this is very important. And I just spent, the last 10 minutes explaining why. I'm not going to do an entire 911 show here. That's my thoughts on it as it stands. If anybody would like more elaboration, then by all means, I'll be happy to do a longer show on it. Friends, we're going to move on. Kurt Nemo, prisonplanet.com, August 30th. I want to go over some of this border issue, and this is why I'm tying it into 911. Remember, I was talking about the paying people. We should not have given ISIS money. That's why I'm wearing my Ron Paul shirt. I had a friend of mine lost his insurance. The Creeper. What's up, Creeper? And he's furious now. My insurance personally has been destroyed. Remember when I had vertigo? They did amazing. I was delighted with my insurance. Obama took it away, and now I don't know what I'm going to do. When you had a chance to do something, I love you, Creeper. You didn't do it. You laughed at me for doing this political show. Now that you don't have any insurance, and it's not just him. I love the man, but my point, he's a friend of mine. The point is, it's bigger than that. We had a choice. We didn't have to fund crazy Islamist terrorists that later grew, and largely out of Libya. Fuzzy Head Gaddafi was not the best person in the world, but Gaddafi, especially after Ronald Reagan showed him who was boss, and I was in favor of that. After Ronald Reagan showed him who was boss, he really became a more fair-minded, once he got older, he became a better leader, inasmuch as he was able to keep the many sides of Islam from fighting each other to the degree, certainly, that they are now, since we killed him. And he was able to stay out of this one world banking, central banking currency thing. They had their own currency, and that is why we went after him. Well, the people that we funded to go after him are now doing things like destroying the tomb of Jonah. So, I mean, it is, in fact, a very big deal. It is. Real quick, my behind-the-scenes queen. Christelle, I have a yellow light in here. Please check that. The government watchdog group Judicial Watch cites sources in the government warning that ISIS will attack the United States along the Mexican border. Now, this is important. I need you to remember this headline, especially for the next story. Feds warn of imminent terror threat on U.S. border. Feds. According to high-level sources, ISIS terrorists are operating in Ciudad Juarez on the border across the city of El Paso, Texas. These sources state ISIS operatives will use vehicle-borne improvised implosives devices in the attacks. Homeland Security, Justice, and Defense Department agents have been placed on high alert and instructed to aggressively work all possible leads and sources concerning this imminent terrorist threat, Judicial Watch reports. The attack is coming very soon. And again, today's 9/11, so be ever vigilant. See something, say something, BS. Just be vigilant. It is speculated that an attack will happen on the anniversary of September 11th. Well, of course. I mean, there's no great surprise there. It says attack is so imminent that the commanding general at Fort Bliss and the U.S. Army post in El Paso is being briefed, another source confirms. The Department of Homeland Security did not respond to multiple inquiries by Judicial Watch, both telephonic and in writing, about this information, reports Judicial Watch. So we get this wonderful warning. Our borders are wide open for this amnesty of people fleeing drug lords. It's been there forever, and yet we have that warning. But then Breitbart puts report Islamist terrorism absent from FBI list of domestic terror threats. No, wait a minute. What was the last headline? What did I just tell you to remember? Feds warn of imminent terror threat. Imminent means very likely for you Lady Gaga fans. This here, report, Islamist terrorism absent from FBI list of domestic threats. So is it imminent? If it's evident, how is it absent from the FBI list of domestic terror threats? You mean to tell me that the ISIS members are going to come over, but nobody domestically is going to be helping them? It's all going to be from people that snuck over. We don't have any turncoats in our country. This is ridiculous. All I can do, and I put this for those of you that read the description in the YouTube videos, I hope and pray to God that they're not really this stupid. They want you to think that they're this stupid, to draw the less intelligent of the terrorism-minded out. That is definitely the hope. Otherwise, they really are this stupid. Despite evidence that Islamist terrorism is the root cause of some of the deadliest attacks on American soil, including the Boston Marathon bombing that killed or wounded hundreds, the FBI has not included it on the list of potential domestic terror threats in most recently published domestic terror assessment. So the Boston bombing happened on American soil, but even that didn't make it matter. No, I think we have a yellow light on my behind-the-scenes screen. I think it needs plugged in. We are good. We are good. Reporters with access to the document titled The National Threat Assessment for Domestic Extremism note that extreme Islamism does not make an appearance at all in the document. Instead, the document, which cites the threat of domestic terrorism as a medium-level threat and predicts this will continue into 2014, lists a wide variety of potential reasons for individuals to engage in terrorism. Well, what are they? Well, these include race-based extremism, both white supremacist and black nationalist, even Puerto Rican nationalism. Do any of you know a single Puerto Rican nationalist? Anybody? Anybody at all? Nope. Crickets. White supremacists? Yes, they exist. They are very rare, and they are usually in prisons. Black...
15 minutes left on the SD card.
All right, if this show goes long, guys, the high def might be posted as 2 videos. That's just the way the camera works. It's the way the cards work. What you're looking at here, and then you got black nationalists. Again, there's not a lot of black nationalists that I know of that are going to be in a high enough number for this to happen. It says political extremism on the left or right, namely animal rights activists or extremists on either side of the abortion debate. Perhaps. Again, I'm not going to say no to everything the government writes just because they're usually dishonest. They could both be a problem there. And lone individuals with extremist but vague political causes, that has been a threat through the entire course of all of history. So that's always on every list. The report does not mention any reason for the absence of radical Islamism from the list, according to reports which appear especially peculiar in light of the heightened threats that groups like the Islamic State, that be ISIS, pose to the United States precisely because of its efficiency in recruiting Westerners to the jihadist cause. In other words, we know that they are indoctrinating Islamists in this country that would be domestic. And then ISIS is sneaking in quite possibly to meet up with them. And yet through all of this, the FBI just doesn't mention that that could be a domestic terror threat. We're going to go with this a little bit more because it's really big news. For those of you that want me to move on, trust me, there's more news coming. But this is important. We don't rush through news. We do news correctly. Steve Watson, Prison Planet. Rand Paul, Obama's support weapons has allowed ISIS to grow. This is why non-interventionalism is important. Now, I heard somebody earlier, it was on a comment line, say that they thought we should be more diplomatic towards ISIS. You can't be diplomatic to ISIS. What you can do, what you can do very well, is you can aid. You can give aid to the people that they are displacing. And you can do things such as perhaps helping them set up ways that they can defend themselves. I've got no problem with that. I really am not so libertarian that I'm against all work. You cannot ever work with anybody else ever. I don't like the United Nations. I wish that we were not in it. That doesn't mean that I think it might be a good idea to bring the friendly countries, Canada, America, Britain, get us together and say, hey, this is how you create a force to fight this. This is how we do it in America. I've got no problem with that. I like giving aid and food and health and that kinds of things to people that they are displaced. But you can't bomb them, because what you end up doing is bombing enough innocents who were on your side until you accidentally bomb them, that now members of their family are joining these kinds of groups. That's why military action is a very bad idea in such cases. It says, while advocating a forceful response to the ISIS threat, Senator Rand Paul called out the president Wednesday, saying that his support for Islamic rebels over the last 3 years have led directly to the rise of the radical terror group. Rand is saying that he grudgingly supports the fact that we have to do something against this. But at the same time, he would not have to want to do this if we hadn't funded the people, the headcutters, to begin with. If we hadn't overthrown Gaddafi, for instance, we wouldn't have such a strong ISIS factor to deal with now. Fuzzyhead was a contained threat at worst. Appearing on Fox News, Paul said, I think that President Obama's support for the Islamic rebels has allowed ISIS to grow stronger in Syria. That is also true. They never would have grown without this support. Your tax dollars sending them weapons, that's what this is. Their allies getting weapons from both us, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Qatar, in case you're wondering who might be in those 28 pages I mentioned earlier. We have done a disservice and created chaos that has allowed the jihadists to grow stronger, Paul added. It is common knowledge that the U.S. has for 3 years now funded and supported the rebels in Libya and Syria. Indeed, the same extremists who overthrew Gaddafi in Libya, Fuzzyhead, were reportedly airlifted into Syria by NATO forces. The same extremists who killed U.S. and NATO troops in Iraq were supported all the way by the U.S. and its allies in Libya and Syria. In other words, in order to defeat one enemy, we built a new and stronger enemy, and that enemy is called ISIS, because we had to get involved in it. Interventionism isn't always the answer, Paul said, noting that he has now had to defend himself against claims that he is both an isolationist and an interventionalist. No, he's not. Bush and Obama have got the country into such a mess that now we have to do something, but we wouldn't have been there if Paul had been president, because his father, because he wouldn't have put us in a situation where we would now have to act. I'm someone who believes that the Constitution and believes that America should have a strong national defense and believes that we should defend ourselves, but when we do it, we should do it in the way that the Constitution has intended, the senator urged. If I had been president, I would have called a joint session of Congress this August, brought everybody back from recess, and said, this is why ISIS is a threat to the country. This is how I want to act. This is why I want to act. But I want to do it in a constitutional manner. We are not going to let our enemies behead our journalists. And again, that makes sense. But we wouldn't be dealing with this if we haven't funded them. So the last thing I'm going to do on this border news, now that we've established exactly where we are, is, and again, if some vigilante goes off here and deliberately hurts somebody, no, I'm not going to support that. But I'd like to give a hats off to these heroes here. This is from Yahoo News. Armed patriots, the private citizens out to secure the U.S. border. What's happened is, I'm going to do, I can do one more in 7 minutes and then we'll move the video over. Armed patriots, the private citizens out to secure the border. Since our government isn't doing a very good job of protecting the border, then what we are doing is we're forcing private citizens to stand up for the border themselves. And that's what you're seeing here. With binoculars in hand, an assault rifle slung over his chest, and a Glock pistol on his lap, a man named Will scans the banks of the Rio Grande looking for anyone trying to cross Mexico into Texas. Well, Sam, you're such a racist. Yeah, compared to the drug lords that are coming over, what that guy owns is an erector set. We're not talking about little lost Juan who's trying to get a job. We're talking about people that are coming over in tanks with cocaine in it. Will is a member of the Patriots, a group known of heavily armed private citizens who use displays of force to intimidate people attempting to cross the border illegally. Well, for those of you that saw the last New England game, that's not the Patriots over there, is it? Since early summer, the Patriots have patrolled an area near Brownsville, Texas. Why? Because they threatened to kill the homeowner, for one. If you spot them and shine your light on them, that lets them know that you're there, said 25-year-old construction worker from Indiana who flew to Texas for a stint with the Patriots, which all of you listening should do if you can. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to come over. Even if they're going to try to cross again, they're still making it harder for them, and that's the reason we're here. The Patriots Information Hotline, a network calling center, estimates that 22 groups of armed patriots have sprung up along the border from Texas to California this year. With names like Patriots, Citizen Defenders, etc., the group often set up camp on private land, that's legal, along the border at a property owner's invitation, also legal. Expenses are generally paid by the members, though some funds from like-minded donors. Of course, the critics are calling it militias and vigilantism, but it says they're patrolling it in body armor with handcuffs. And it says the Patriots operate on 21 acres of land owned by Rusty Monsees, whose family has had a ranch on the border since the 1940s. They patrol in body armor, riding all-terrain vehicles that drown out the sound of cicadas at night. Monsey, 66, said illegals have poisoned his dogs and sprayed his yellow house with bullets, but he refuses to leave. If they leave, though, I'm dead, he said about the Patriots. So don't tell me that the heroes guarding the border with guns are bigots. We have people coming into the country deliberately killing our citizens, Mexican thugs, South American thugs, people that wouldn't be welcome in their own country or not even welcome among the general family of man, that we're fighting back here. And that's important. Go ahead, Christelle, and flip this over. For those of you on the high def, this is going to be a 2-part video, so just stay with me. Those of you on low def, I'm going to go ahead and just start letting. You guys on high def are going to miss some of my ads. Boo-hoo. Low def people, let me tell you what. Mike McLaughlin, one of the most awesome writers you can possibly get your hands on a story from. He's on Facebook and he's looking for people to buy his short stories and fund him. You know what? You don't see many writers. You don't see many writers at all. But fortunately, with what we're looking at now, more and more are coming up, and we're trying to get them noticed. And this show is trying to get them noticed. Mike McLaughlin is a supporter of The Correct Views, and The Correct Views is a supporter of Mike McLaughlin. Also, if you get a chance, friends, you might want to check out the Seacrest Motel. Do you know Hollow Weekends is here? Like, killer Hollow Weekends when they got the coasters and the monsters and everything is in full bloom?
Yeah.
Well, Christelle, do you want to pay between $120 and $600 for a room when to go there?
No.
No. So where do you want to go?
Seacrest Motel.
Go call the Seacrest Motel. Let Vicky. Yeah. When Vicky answers the phone, let Vicky know that you heard about it from TCV. You are going to save a fortune. You're going to save so much that if you had the money for the breakers, you'll be able to buy your tickets and go into the park the next day with the money you saved on the room.
Win a big monkey.
Yes, you can go win a big monkey, too. Christelle's been on a mission to win these giant monkeys. And you know what? You'll save enough money that you can waste all your money trying to win the big monkey. So go to the Seacrest Motel, friends, and be very, very happy that you did. One last plug real quick. Arcadia Grill. Wonderful food. Wonderful service. Always supported this show. Mom just passed. A lot of my longtime viewers know. Dad passed a couple years ago. Everybody met at the Arcadia Grill and remembered a life well lived. That's how good their food is, and we choose them all the time. Anytime we have a chance to go there, get some ravioli, get a drink well made, or a well drink if you want. The Arcadia Grill in downtown Canton, Ohio. Guys, we've got a couple stories left in course of the Dundee of the day. This is Mail Online, though. Before we get to the Dundee, we have another Dundee. His name is Al Gore. It sounds like a Japanese monster movie. Al Gore versus the ice. Myth of Arctic meltdown. Stunning satellite images show summer ice cap is thicker and covers 1.7 million square kilometers more ice than 2 years ago, despite Al Gore's prediction that it would be ice-free by now. That's right. 7 years ago, Al Gore predicted that we would be ice-free in this region because of man-made global warming. The planet has not warmed, I think it's in like 10 years or 14 years. And there is more ice now than there was when they were worried about a next ice age in the freaking 70s. The speech by former U.S. Vice President Al Gore was apocalyptic. The North Polar ice cap is falling off a cliff, he said. It would be completely gone in summer in as little as 7 years. That's right, 7 years from right now. These comments came in 2007 as Al Gore accepted the Nobel Peace Prize for campaigning on climate change. Well, decreases the prestige of the Nobel Peace Prize, doesn't it? Let's remember Hitler got it too. Although in their defense, nobody really knew what degree Hitler was going to be. But just the same, Hitler got the Peace Prize. Says 7 years after the warning, the Mail on Sunday can reveal that, far from vanishing, the Arctic ice cap has expanded. That means grown for you Usher fans. For the second year in succession, with a surge, depending on how you measure it, of between 43 and 63% since 2012. To put it another way, an area the size of Alaska, America's largest state, was open water 2 years ago, but it is again now covered by ice. In other words, more proof that man is not warming the planet, more proof that we really dodged a bullet by not having Al Gore as president, even though he should have been. I'm glad he wasn't. It says Mr. Gore, whose office yesterday failed to respond to a request for comment, insisted then there is a 75% chance that the entire polar ice cap during some of the summer months could be completely ice-free within 7 years. It says, for years, many have been claiming that the Arctic is in an irrevocable death spiral, with imminent ice-free summers bound to trigger further disasters. Guess what? It's not happening. And friends, that brings us to the dumbity of the day. This was supposed to be the Dunce Cap of the Month award. Many of you know that the TSA has completely obliterated my regular computer. I've been using Crystals, and in the shuffle, I ended up missing the story that I actually wanted to win the Dunce Cap of the Month. I'm happy with the one that got it, but this had to be mentioned. This is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. School kids suspended and arrested for imaginary shooting a dinosaur. Yep. In another case of school officials adhering to ridiculous zero-tolerance policies, a student from South Carolina was suspended and arrested by police recently after writing an imaginary story about using a gun to shoot a dinosaur. The offender, 16-year-old Alex Stone of Somerville High School in the suburb of Charleston, was in the course of completing an assignment where students were asked to write something brief about themselves, much like Facebook status updates. Stone told reporters that he found himself in hot water with teachers for being over-imaginative and mentioning the word gun. Keep in mind, you have a God-given right, according to the Constitution, as the Second Amendment, to talk about guns. Freedom of speech is your right to talk about whatever, and the Second Amendment is your right to keep and bear arms. I killed my neighbor's pet dinosaur, and then in the next status, I thought I bought the gun to take care of the business, the student said. A 65 million year gap between the story and reality didn't seem to matter to teachers, who immediately suspended Stone for a week, searched his book bag and locker, finding nothing, and then inexplicably called the police. When the cops paid a visit to the student, he reportedly became irate. I wonder why. Was arrested and charged with disorderly conduct, all before the boy's parents were informed what was going on. I bet he was angry. I bet he was. I'm sure of it. I mean, where's the next Stephen King going to come from? Why do I do these stories? Call the Somerville High School in a suburb of Charleston. Call them. Repeatedly call them and let them know what you think of this. Let them know what you think of this ridiculous ordinance or policy or whatever the hell you want to call it. If the school would have called me and told me about the paper and asked me to come down and discuss everything, at least get this point of view out of the way, he meant it. I never heard from the school. Never. They never called me, said the boy's mother, Karen Gray, mother of the dinosaur slayer. Stone's parents were barely able to comprehend the actions of the school. I could understand if they made him rewrite it because it did have gun in it. She's a bonehead herself for even capitulating to that. But a pet dinosaur? Gray added, I mean, first of all, we don't have dinosaurs anymore. Second of all, he's not even old enough to buy a gun. The student, and again, he said he bought it. It's a story. The student, I could understand if he had to rewrite it because he had a gun in it. That's ridiculous. The student is standing his ground on the matter. God bless him. I regret it because they put it on my record, but I don't see harm in it, Stone said. I think that there might have been a better way of putting it, but I think me writing like that, it shouldn't matter because I put it out towards a person. And it mentions the other zero tolerance laws. You can see the article on InfoWars. Friends, that's the height of stupidity. So call them. Let them know what you think of it. Let them know what you think of wasting your tax dollars, police time. What if something important would have happened while the police were harassing the dinosaur slayer? Dumdy of the day. Friends, you're listening to The Correct Views. Sam I.B. DeGangi signing off, reminding you to go to themediaspeaks.com to look up the work of Kyle Court, D-Lake, and myself. We are always posting news and relevant media. And again, don't worry about the see something, say something thing. This isn't Nazi Germany. But stay vigilant. If you're in an airport, of course, stay extra vigilant. Make sure you've always got your eye on your bag. Common sense things. You don't need the government to watch over you. You have a brain. Use the thinking part of your brain. Good night, friends. God bless.